Yeah.
We're recording now, so
Oh, we need like a dun 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 dun. We need a jingle. Yeah. Welcome back to Squadcast number 2. So today it's very confusing actually because I'm here. I'm the constant here. David is here, but speak David. Just say
hello.
Something. It says Paul McGorry, so that's not Paul. That is David. So ignore that.
I've messed up already. I should have signed it on my handle, shouldn't I?
No dramas. No dramas. Els, what does yours say?
I think mine just says Els.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nice and simple. Right. So, gang, audience, viewers, listeners, we are talking about calorie counting today. So, I don't know too much about calorie counting, hence the adjudication role in this. David is arguably more pro calorie counting, but there's some leeway. Els, we've been told, is very against calorie counting. Very much so that my hand doesn't even fit on the screen. So we're going to throw in some, basically want to understand why there's difference of opinions. Often in fitness, we see that there are difference of opinions, there's contradictory statements, and calories is one of those that definitely falls into that bucket. So before we get into the who's right and who's wrong conversation of it, what is a calorie? Els, do you want to kick us off on actually explaining to the viewers what is a calorie?
Yeah. I believe it's the expert description of a is it the units, like the energy units, like the measurable like energy unit of a food, or have I confused that with
That sounds on the right sort of line.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so a calorie essentially is a measure of energy. It isn't necessarily related to food, it's related to the amount that you burn, but also that you consume. So when we talk about calories within food, we're talking about the energy that we're putting in our body, but then also when we talk about exercise, we're talking about the calories that we burn.
Perfect. So it's all about calorie intake and calorie expenditure. And I guess ultimately you do more of one, you lose weight, you do more of the other, you gain weight. I guess that's essentially what it is. It's kind of like a fuel, isn't it? Fuel that goes into the body, fuel that gets burnt.
Yeah, and I think to properly understand, so you've already gone into eating too many calories will make you put on weight, and if you eat less calories, it makes you lose weight. So I think it's important to note here, so there's something called total daily energy expenditure, and that is the total amount of energy your body expends within the day. I know it is exactly what it says on the tin, but to break that down, it's the amount of calories that your body uses to function throughout the day.
Yes.
And that's broken up into a number of things. So you've got your basal metabolic rate, and that is the amount of energy that your body uses if you were to do nothing. So if you were to just lay in bed without moving at all, your body uses an amount of energy to function. So your brain, lung, vital organs, energy. So that's your BMR. You then obviously don't just lay in bed all day. There's sorts of activities that you do throughout the day. So you've got your NEAT, which is your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And that sounds like a really, really scientific term, but it's basically just everything you do throughout the day that burns more energy. So it could be walking, it could be typing on your keyboard, could be drinking water. So you've got your BMR, your NEAT. You've also got your EAT, which is your exercise activity thermogenesis. So this is the stuff that you actively do to burn calories. So it could be going for a run. It could be going to lift weights in the gym. It could be literally anything, any form of exercise. And then the last part of that makeup is the thermic effect of food. So as well as your body using energy for its vital organs to survive, you've got the amount of energy that your body uses to digest food. And that's the last bit that makes up all of your total daily energy expenditure within the day. So that will be an amount. And then when we talk about eating more than that amount, that is when you put on weight or you put on body fat. Your body stores the excess energy. And then if you're in a deficit of that total daily energy expenditure, that's when you'll start to burn fat or muscle. It depends. It depends if you're exercising, if you're stimulating your muscles, if you're eating adequate protein, but there'll be some sort of body composition change either way with an increase or a decrease in calories.
Gotcha. Very well summarized. That took me back to the PT course, module 3 or 4, the TDE there. So calorie counting is a term that we hear a lot of. I guess that is essentially what you've sort of touched on there in terms of getting an understanding for how many calories you might burn in a given day. And is it therefore about counting those calories, or do people tend to just think about counting the calories that they intake? I don't know, that term calorie counting, Els, what does that typically refer to in reference to what Temps was just talking about?
So generally, and in terms of like fitness and weight loss and diet and what have you, calorie counting will be like a tool that people utilize to make sure that they don't surpass a certain amount of calories a day, or that they reach a certain level of calories a day. So if they intake enough, you know, if you're bulking, cutting on a diet, there's lots of variables of, you know, the way that people intake their food is a vast spectrum. And there's like various different ways that you can calculate or roughly calculate how many calories you're taking in during a day. So you can, you know, just look at the back of a packet, and then kind of calculate it from there. You can use one of those abhorrent calorie counting apps where you log in everything that you eat and then offset it with the amount of exercise that you've done. If you've got the knowledge, you can also use some of those apps to calculate all the things that David mentioned when he was explaining what a calorie is, your BMR, NEAT, etc., etc. But I think, so one of the reasons why I just think calorie counting, maybe a more scientific reason than my moral reasons, which we can touch on later. But so when we're told that we want to lose weight, many trainers will head towards like your kind of end goal being a calorie deficit. So end goal at the end of the day, you always want to burn more energy than you, so expend more energy than you take in. And those people who aren't necessarily in the know for whatever reason, they don't have the knowledge, they you know, and why would you unless it was your career, they don't take into account all those things, like all those things that David mentioned when he was explaining what a calorie is. You know, you do need a certain number of calories, whether you sit on your sofa all day or whether you know, are training for the Olympics. There is a certain amount of calories that your body needs just to motor your functions, your digestive system, your, you know, your brain, apart from anything else, you know, your lungs expanding and, you know, contracting, your heart, like, you know, going to the loo, getting up and sitting down. I mean, actually, before you've even done any of those things. And I think when people become so fixated on calorie counting, they can kind of forget that actually, you know, eating isn't just something that should be done just to power exercise. Like eating is a basic human right. And yeah, that's a very long-winded way of explaining, like how you might measure calories and where there kind of might become an imbalance about your knowledge and understanding of what you were taking in versus what you were.
So I think that's a really good point, because I agree. I think there probably are trainers out there, and there's certainly non-qualified nutritionists that will just talk about calorie deficits all the time. Temps, if you want to come with it from someone that is knowledgeable in the training world of that aspect of it, what would you say, like, why it is a good idea to look at that calorie deficit at the end of the day if you are trying to be in like a cutting phase, for example?
So just to go on to Eleanor's point, like, it is so important that you've got a good understanding of your clients to begin with, because as she says, everybody needs food. Food is a fuel, and it shouldn't just be about calories. It should be about the quality of calories that are going into our body. Essentially, you could eat, say your maintenance level calories is 2,000 calories a day. You could eat 1,500 calories worth of chocolate and you will burn fat. It's a science. As long as you've got more energy being expended than you have got coming in, you will lose weight. But obviously that isn't the correct thing to do. You're going to miss out on your micronutrients. You're actually going to miss out on your macronutrients, because you still need a certain level of fats in your body to uptake the vitamins and minerals, which you wouldn't be getting if you were eating chocolate, but also you need protein for recovery, repair, etc. I guess where my knowledge comes into this, and I've actually done a lot on it because it's part of my my training program. I think you need to have an understanding of how active somebody is throughout the day. If they've got a manual labor job, you need to build that into it. They're obviously more active than anybody else. You also need to be very aware of what their goals are. So it may not be that everybody wants to burn fat. Some people want to put muscle on. Some people may want to maintain the way they are. Some people may just want to improve their performance at something. So the categories are completely different depending on what your goal is. And then I also think it's so different on a person-to-person case. So you can, again, scientifically drop your calories super low, but then what you're doing is you're dropping fat drastically, which for some people could be a source of motivation. Some people want to diet for, say, 2 weeks, see a difference, and then that's the motivation for them to continue. And I'm not to say to anybody, you shouldn't do that. What I try and do is put people in a controlled deficit, which is based on a percentage of their maintenance level calories. It isn't just a flat level, right, take 1,000 calories off. We know that 3,500 calories means you're going to lose a pound of fat. If you did on a 1,000 calorie deficit a day, yes, you will lose £2 a week, but it's being more upskilled and knowledgeable about what that person wants to do. So I think from a calorie counting perspective, as Eleanor said with the packet counting, you can't just look at a packet and it say the average number of calories for a woman is 1,500 and the average number of calories for a man is 2,000, because it's just absolutely absurd. Me personally, my maintenance level calories is 3,300, and I know that I can eat that without my body changing too much. And it's, I want to make those changes to my body, then I need to take into consideration, right, okay, I want to burn a bit of fat, but I need to do it in the best way possible, so I've got sustained energy still. So again, it goes into more of a nutritional perspective. You need to start looking at getting your main food groups in, what source of energy you're getting, and also everybody's body's different. So I actually work really well on a high carb diet with the same level of protein. I make sure I get my 20% level of fats in, but I actually prefer eating a higher split of carbs and protein as opposed to going really high fat. And I think there's a lot of diets out there that say this is gospel, this is how you're going to change your body shape. But the underlying fact behind it is that calories on their own will determine, from a fat loss perspective, your body composition, but there's so much more to it. Because if you want to lose fat but also keep your muscle, you need to be stimulating your muscle through lifting weights. You need to have an adequate level of protein coming in, which around about 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. But again, that's so specific to somebody who wants to maintain or build muscle. The average person doesn't need that amount of protein to survive. So it's also specific to the person.
Els, want to jump in there? Agree with that? All that?
Yes, absolutely. I think everybody being different, like this theme just is not something that is explored nearly enough in our industry. This sort of blanket rule that reducing calories will equal weight loss. Yes, if we absolutely had to boil it down to like the most basic, most easy to follow rule that we could just kind of, if there was no gyms, if there was no training, if there was no exercise, but people still wanted to lose weight, that would be what we would tell them, eat less calories. But we don't have to do that. We don't have to be so extreme. We are able to, especially in our profession, tailor things to suit our individual needs and the individual needs of our clients. I think something that we haven't mentioned yet is people's metabolism. So people with a higher metabolism, whether they exercise or not, will need more calories. And we've spoken about men and women and what their needs are, but then again, there's these sort of tropes, you know, an active man, an inactive man, an active woman, an inactive woman. And, you know, there could be any rule that we prescribe to any of those people, but it just, you know, I for one know that if I go into a calorie deficit, I won't lose weight. If I want to lose weight, I eat more, I get more energy, I train harder, then I lose weight. That's my math.
So does that put you into a calorie deficit in the end, though, by having more energy to then enabling you to work harder?
I mean, I don't know. Like I've always eaten a lot. Like I've got a very high fat, high carb, high protein diet, high sugar, and I just pack it away. And I know that. I mean, put it this way. Yes, I suppose. So if I do end up in a calorie deficit, then yes, obviously, you know, that's happened. But if I purposefully eat less,
got you,
like reduce, you know, the amount of all of those things that I said in my diet, I don't go anywhere. And I think sometimes actually, you know, when your body can't tell the difference between being starved because you're not eating and being starved because there's no food available. And when you don't eat calories, not everybody, but a lot of bodies will hang on to fat reserves, meaning that you'll plateau. There's a good chance, not a certain chance, but a good chance that you won't lose weight because your body doesn't want to lose anything more.
So what do you do for yourself in terms of wanting to stay in a certain level of performance or staying in a level of shape? Do you, like, how do you monitor what you eat?
So and this is, I don't want to get bogged down in gender at all, but what I have to say about the two different sexes or the many different sexes and the way we look at calories, it kind of comes into play here. So what's speaking generally, what men understand as calories tends to be quite binary. So men who are into the gym, who like bulking, leaning, cutting, all those things that David mentioned before, you know, goal orientated, they'll, you know, food will kind of be boiled down to that for those people. And then men, in my experience, men who don't go to the gym and don't train might make sure that they don't eat too much during the day, but largely probably won't be bothered. And for women, unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. We are so conditioned to worry about gaining weight that food just becomes a whole mind game to us. You know, it's so, you know, it's not just, oh, I like this, I'll eat it, I've enjoyed that, move on. There's so much extra like baggage and bullshit, excuse my language, that comes, unfortunately, for so many women when it comes to eating. And I found for me the best way to manage my diets is not to link it in any way or in as much as I can to my weight.
Okay.
So within reason, like David said, I don't want to get like 2,000 of my however many calories a day from chocolate. That would be great, but I'm not going to do that. But I find if I separate my calories from everything else, that is a healthy mindset for me. If I start thinking about how much I've eaten during the day, it's just a slippery slope back into a very disordered relationship with food and a place that I just don't want to be in.
It's interesting. Mr. David, obviously you've done various plans for people, but also for yourself, where you've decided, right, I'm going to get in this shape and therefore that's going to dictate this strict calorie plan. What's your sort of comment on that and how your relationship with food remains healthy, even though you're in those periods of strict calorie deficit or increase, whatever the word is?
Also, David, if you wouldn't mind saying, as a man, like your experiences of like calories and how you think about food in like comparison to the way I've said I do. I'd be really interested to hear that.
So I'm not being rude. I'm just writing everything down on here because I've just picked up on a few.
Cheeky text. Wait. Sliding into someone's DM.
Yours.
All I had to do was go for a half an hour podcast. I just couldn't help myself. So I think the first point is on metabolism. And Eleanor mentioned that you need to take that into consideration when we're talking about calories, and that actually is accounted for within that TDEE. So that has actually already been accounted for in your basal metabolic rate. So the rate at which your body burns calories for energy is built into that TDEE. So not to say that's a redundant comment, but it has actually been accounted for.
Got it.
It's good. It's just knowledge sharing, isn't it? And I've done a lot on this because I've got my whole platform is based on calories in versus calories out, which is why this is such an interesting conversation. And I'll go on to talk about why it's about calories in a second. But again, another important point that I think we've actually got a similar sort of mindset on it is the deficit. So you've said that you don't create, or you're not in a calorie deficit. But I think what you mean is you're not in a calorie deficit through food alone. And if I just use this screen to sort of explain it. So say this is your maintenance level calories, and this is made up of your total daily expenditure. Or so let's actually split that out again. So say this is your maintenance level calories. You can create that deficit, say my left hand's food, by dropping your food. And if that's your maintenance level calories, and you're eating in a deficit of where your maintenance is, you will burn fat. That is scientific. You're in an energy deficit, so you will burn fat. I think what you're saying you do, Els, is you keep your food here, and by having your food up here, it means you've got more energy to exercise. So in fact, you're taking your expenditure up here, which is creating the deficit. So you're expending more energy than you're eating.
Oh no, I'd had the hands.
There you go. No, it's interesting because my whole ethos is something I term litness, so balancing lifestyle with fitness. And I say to people, I don't want you to have a restrictive diet at all. In fact, I want you to go out and get pissed at the weekends. I want you to eat chocolate, but it is all in moderation. I'll be the first one to say, I go out and get battered, but I'll do it once a month or once every 6 weeks or something. And then I like to say to people, balance your days, not your weeks, months or years, but more often than not, you balance your weeks with your months. So if you have a bit of a shitty, bingy week, you'll then know that for the next 3 weeks, you need to be a bit more clean. But this is all dependent on achieving your goals. And I think this is something that resonates back to F45. We're all about helping people achieve their lifestyle goals. And if your lifestyle goal is to be a sumo wrestler, who am I to tell you not to eat anything? So my lifestyle goal is to move well. It's to be in reasonable shape. I'm a single, young-ish man who wants to look good when he goes down the beach. So that it is vanity, but for me, that will lead on to the calories in a shorter while. That is me. And I think that's where it's so dependent on the person themselves. What I will say is, I think it's very important. And I actually think it's something that should be taught at school. However, I do think that getting caught up on calories can be bad for your mental health. But I think until you've got an understanding of what a calorie is, and I do now, I can tell you the definition of it, but that's only become apparent in the last, I guess, 4 or 5 years. If you don't understand what a calorie is, how are you ever going to know how much food your body needs? And whether that be how much it needs to burn fat or how much food your body needs to be able to perform well, I still think we need this understanding of what a calorie is. So that's one of the things that I do on my online program. I tell people about calories. I show them how many calories are in the meals that they're eating to achieve whatever goal it is. But then at the end of the program, I take the calories document away and they're just left with a document with foods on them. And then because they've been counting their calories and they've been able to eyeball portion sizes, they know-ish, because it's a 17-week program, which is a long enough period of time to know what you're learning and how to eyeball stuff. I think then you get a healthy relationship back because you've got an understanding of it and you can make your portion sizes correct. So, and this is another one that plays in my mind. So people say, it doesn't matter what shape you are. If you want to be fat, you can be fat. Like an underlying factor, like the most basic of, I suppose, health I can't think of the word now, dictators, is your waist to hip ratio. And if you're, so basically it's saying how much fat have you got in comparison to your skeletal structure. If that's above a certain parameter, you are actually at risk of cardiac problems and all sorts of stuff like that. So although I don't think that we should be determined by society and let people say that being slimmer is better than fat, like when you look at it from a scientific perspective, again, if you are carrying excess body fat, you are at greater risk. Now, I think there's a massive parameter on how much is the acceptable amount of body fat and how much is too much, how much is too little. But again, the science underneath it is there. Now, going on to, I guess, the mind games that you're talking about from a female perspective and how they get caught up on calories, I think that actually comes down to a lack of knowledge. And we've got all these foods that have been branded as healthy, like nuts. There's all sorts of avocados. They are good for you from a nutrients perspective, but it's so easy to overeat. And if you're one of these people that doesn't have an understanding of what a calorie is, but you've heard from whoever it is that avocados are good for you, if you're smashing 2-3 avocados a day with a handful of nuts, it's an easy way to add calories into your diet. And you're thinking, I'm not really enjoying this avocado, but it's healthy and I'm still not losing weight or burning fat or whatever it is your goal is. Where do you get that understanding? So there comes a point where you need to have an understanding of that energy balance in order to achieve the goals that you want. And then that can lead on to, say you're carrying excess fat and that's causing you to be demotivated, depressed, anxious, whatever it is. Having that knowledge on what those calories are can help with that mental health problem. So I'm in full agreement that we shouldn't get hung up on calories. And now I don't bother counting it. But if I do have a goal in mind, again, vanity, if I'm going on a lad's holiday and I want to look in shape, I will count my calories just because I know it's a sure-found way to, I know that I'm going to burn fat and it's the quickest way to do it. If I know exactly what's going in my body, I know that I'm going to reach the goal that I want to do in a set time frame. So from a man's perspective on calorie counting, I'd be lying if I said that I haven't been restricted with my diet and lifestyle in the past to the point where I used to eat chicken and broccoli and think that that's what I had to do. But when you start understanding what calories are and how you can add flavor into your foods but still achieve your goals, I think that's when you find that perfect balance. And that's actually what led me to creating my whole ethos of litness, because I say, as long as you're eating well, and again, well is a hard thing to determine, but as long as you're getting your micronutrients, your macronutrients, you're exercising well 70% of the time, have a beer, do this, do whatever it is. But also I do think from a man's perspective, and again, this is a massive generalization, men typically do have a higher level of muscle mass. The more muscle you have, the more energy your body's burning, or the more energy your body needs to sustain what it's doing. So you actually can eat more than a lady. So you do need to be less conscious about the calories going in.
Go on, El.
He's just very respectful. I thought that was very dear. You are, that's true.
Any comments or else? There was some scribbles that looked
There
like
was
going down
just
there.
I know we want to tie this off. There was just something David said that I wanted to respectfully retaliate against, and actually also ties in really well with something else he said, which I also would like to present another school of thought in. So I think the thing with, again, not wanting to get too bogged down in man and woman talk, but I think lack of knowledge definitely plays a factor in the way that not just women and probably men think about their diet and their calorific intake and what have you. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the reason that women become so fixated on what we eat is because through just simple impacted decade after decade, the assumption that men prefer us to be thin, and the reason that I would disagree that introducing children too early into the what's and whys and wherefores of food is just a very simple way of ensuring that those children especially the girls, because the framework is already set up for us to have disordered eating with disordered relationships with eating already exists. It's for me, it would just be such a kind of, just an almost certainty that if we make children aware of food being anything other than something they enjoy too early, that's what's going to happen. We've got all these, I think, one of the things that we get told a lot when we're little is, that's enough, like you've had enough. And enough is, that's arbitrary. Who decides what's enough? Like, how, who is to tell a child when they, are not hungry anymore? Like, whose position, whose responsibility is that? You can certainly monitor what your children eat and make sure they don't eat too much of the wrong thing. But things that are wrong in childhood very often become things that are unclean in adulthood. And again, clean eating, it's just, it's been heavily criticized as a movement by many, many, many healthcare professionals as being, like a poisonous, like a movement that we shouldn't be investing in, because, again, who decides what a clean food is?
Well, I guess there's got to be science in that, though, hasn't there? When things are high in sugar, we know too much sugar is bad.
I've got an interesting point on that, because, okay, so no food should be looked at as the wrong food or unhealthy food, but by eating too many of those wrong or unhealthy foods, or not having an understanding of what calories is typically what leads to those illnesses. So you don't get type 2 diabetes from eating sugar. You get it as a consequence of being obese or carrying too much weight, which then ties back into that. So I think if we demonize sugar, that isn't the right thing to do. We should not demonize, but we should let people know their levels of being able to eat a certain amount of food so they stay away from these physical health problems, not even the mental health stuff. So being overweight leads to all of these. We're in an obesity epidemic right now, pandemic, whatever you call it. And I think that is due to a lack of knowledge.
Of course, and I completely agree. Well, if we're talking about, anatomical and physiological issues and diseases, of course, food is of tantamount importance to ensuring your internal health in most cases. But if we're talking about mental health, I think unless there's any need for you to become like very fastidious and pernickety with what you eat and how many calories you intake, you just don't need to. If someone active like David, I think you're really good template for it, because we know what you do, we know you're active, but we also see that you enjoy
I enjoy a what?
a junk food, an unclean food.
But I never demonise that as an unclean food.
Yeah, but there are people who would.
So it is a tough one, because I genuinely believe I've got the knowledge on how I can do what I do. If I go out and alcohol's no good for you, is it? We all know alcohol's no good for you. It's full of
red wine is.
Is it any alcohol you put in your body is a toxin, and your body stops doing anything else until it gets rid of that toxin. So that actually drinking alcohol makes you retain fat, because until that toxin's out of your body won't metabolize anything else in your body. That's one for another time. But I think I'm able to do what I do, and the reason I cook with my top off, I document what I'm doing. But genuinely, it's because people can see the change in my body composition when I go to Ibiza for a week with the boys, or when I'm super strict and stay indoors. I'm the proof point that what I'm saying is working. And yes, you can get hung up on it. But I think the knowledge that I've got allows me to be able to lead the lifestyle I want. And if I know that I can eat 3 square meals a day, and then I've got 500 calories in the evening to smash a bar of chocolate or have 4 pints of Guinness or whatever it is, I personally, and this is where it comes down to a personal matter, I would rather prep my meals, count my calories for those 3 meals, and then be able to do whatever I want in the evening. I think where it comes unstuck, and this is when you need to start looking at like performance at work, performance in sport, performance in anything. You basically want to sustain your energy levels like this throughout the day. And by us saying, eat chocolate, do this, do that. And this is, I actually think we could do a second podcast on this because there's so much more to just counting calories. You want to sustain your energy like this throughout the day. And you do that by eating carbohydrates that aren't fast releasing. Proteins and fats.
Slow release.
Proteins and fats keep your blood sugar level stable. So me smashing a bar of chocolate at night when I'm just sitting in front of the TV anyway, doesn't actually make much difference. Because if I feel sluggish, I'm just going to go to bed. But then there's things like drinking caffeine too late. It can stop you going into a deep sleep, which then if it affects your sleep, it can affect your hormone balance the next day, which can then make you think that you're actually hungrier than you are. And that can lead to you overeating, which again will make it harder for you to reach a fitness goal. So I think there isn't one answer to everything. And that's what annoys me when people say, and this is why I'm not pro calories and pro calorie counting, because there's so many other factors that go into it. And without naming any names, people who say, all you need to do is be in a calorie deficit. Yeah, we know that because it's
we all know who you mean.
It isn't that easy. And by me saying it's easy, you just got to be in a calorie deficit. It's not the right thing to do. I'm telling people, what I believe in is I'm telling people, I'm giving people the knowledge on how to make those changes to their lifestyle. And I've had actually people come back to me and say, look, I've read your whole plan. I've done the 17 weeks and I know why I'm carrying excess weight. And to be honest, I like the lifestyle I live. So I'd take that versus having to do what you've told me. And as long as they've got the knowledge afterwards, I'm like, do you know what, bro? Fair play, or girl, whatever, whoever is it.
Nice. Smooth. I think disclaimer, what Dave has just said about so the only reason that I don't really and truly eat what I want when I want, and when I say eat what I want when I want, like it would be a jar of Biscoff for breakfast, 1 for lunch, 1 for dinner, and then like whatever the hell else in between. The sole reason, and I really do mean this from the bottom of my heart, maybe like a 5% shout out to my like ass and thighs, is because a blood sugar spike is extremely detrimental to my mood and my energy levels. And when you're seeing clients stay, hour after hour, you can't really afford to feel really hyper and then really tired, or like act really hyper and then really tired, like having to like act calm when you're like on a real massive sugar high, or indeed act energetic when you're in a slump. And also, as David said, like your sleep at night, you might be one of those people who can just like eat 12 crunchies and lie down and go to sleep for 12 hours. That's definitely not me. And yeah, like maintaining constant energy in our jobs through the day is, really important. And I wish I was the exception to that rule, because there are people, as with any rule, any of the things that we've talked about, there are people who can do all these things and just not be affected by it mentally, physically. At my age.
Well, why don't we pencil that in as a second podcast to talk about the effects that energy has on, the effect that food has on energy throughout the day.
Definitely. I think that's one to get Jacinta in, because she's actually a nutritionist. You can probably say it from that perspective. What I will say, just to finish off, and I'm actually glad that we've actually had a pretty good discussion here, because we've got given a lot of points across without coming to a yes or no, whatever it is, because it is a personal matter. And this is quite a funny one, Tommy. Like, remember when we were in the office and I'd see the shit that people put in their bodies. Like they'd go up and get pizza for lunch, and they'd 3 o'clock on the dot would go and get a chocolate bar and
I was one of them.
But like, and then people used to have the audacity to say to me, why are you going home at 4 o'clock? And I'm thinking, I guarantee I've been more productive in my day, like eating what I've eaten, waking up, going to the gym, eating well, than you've had. So
Yeah.
shut up, Jonathan. You got a whisper hanging over your mouth.
No, I used to hate it. I used to fall into that trap every day at 3 o'clock. I would go get a Boost bar and a pack of salt and vinegar big hula hoops.
I was just about to say the hula hoops. You used to
And
love them.
Yeah, and I would, and then that last, oh my days. Well, actually, I'd be sluggish after lunch as well because I'd stock up on some sort of like Friday fish and chip or something. It was terrible.
I'd love to know, maybe to end on a super high note, I'd love to know like people's, if calories meant nothing, like what would you eat in the day?
What would I start? Oh, I'd probably start with, oh my goodness, when I was in Australia, I had probably the best breakfast I've ever had. It was a blueberry bagel, and it had bacon, mascarpone cheese, maple syrup, and popcorn on top. And it was so good. Honestly, I did feel quite sick after it, but I'd have that for the morning. I'd definitely get some sort of big barbecue burger with chips, crispy bacon in there. I love a bowl of cereal. It's so basic, but I just love sugary cereal. But not like too sugary. I couldn't have Cocoa Pops every day, but it'd probably be a mixture of like some muesli with a bit of Cocoa Pops on top or something.
Go on, Els.
Yeah, what would you have?
Oh, so yeah, Biscoff. I'd honestly eat until I felt sick. I'd maybe just have like 10 jars on the go during the day and just eat that, like limitless Biscoff. Definitely cereal as well, like anything sweet, like crunchy nut cornflakes, frosted shreddies before they made them like pissy wissy, like sugarless. Like sugar puffs. Anything sweet. Oh, I like the Jordan's Country Crisp that's just got loads of chocolate in.
There's a theme here, Els.
and then like crisps, hummus, chips, like any, like I don't eat meat, but like any veggie burger, chips, yum. And then my dog's just pulled up one of my headphones. And like about 30 beers.
Oh, there you go. Quite a few. David, let's end on you then. What would be the...
Yeah, I'd have a constant supply of Guinness into gin and tonics throughout the day. So I like to do four Guinness is a good benchmark, and then move on to the gins.
4?
Maybe a Bloody Mary for breakfast, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
Do you know what? My perfect day would be a good workout. I love a workout. And then we'd go for a bottomless brunch. So something to boot, like avocado, eggs, Bloody Mary, into Bellinis or Prosecco's or something. I love Burger and Lobster or Nando's. They're my two favourite restaurants. Biscoff, chocolate orange. Yeah, I'm just a bit of a sweet tooth lover. Why have I got such a white face? Get this sun on me.
Sun. David, Nando's is it's just chicken and chips.
Oh, it is so
Yeah, I know.
It's so good.
I've got a very good palate, but I do just love a Nando's.
I was going to say who doesn't, but it sounds like Els doesn't.
Oh no.
Well,
my mum's from Trinidad. Once you've eaten her roast chicken, you don't eat any other chicken.
To be fair, my mum lived in Barbados, and I used to eat very, very good jerk chicken, but I don't know, just love a Nando's.
Can't sell it.
Shameful.
Anywho, I think we wrap it up there, folks. So it sounds like there is no right or wrong answer on calorie counting. It sounds like with everything in life, it's about balance. It's about individuality, individual cases, individual timeframes, individual goals, etc. So for those that have listened and got to the end of this podcast, there is no answer. But we hope you enjoyed hearing the different approaches that can be taken. And yeah, let's follow up another time with some sort of energy checks. I think that would be very useful.
Definitely. But there is science underlying it. A deficit will make you burn fat. A surplus will make you gain weight, muscle, fat, whatever it is. There is science underlying it. It's just whether you should count is the jury's out.
And what is more important, counting calories or having a disordered relationship with your body?
There we go.
Exactly.
And on that note,
David.
Sayonara. We're just going to continue off screen, like shouting.
I'm going to have the final word. Yeah, listen to what I said, basically. See you later. Bye.